Now, if somebody told you you could make over 3,000% profit off a cheap piece of material, that would sound crazy, wouldn't it? Well, we're talking about turning a cheap piece of basswood like this, worth around $3, into products that are worth over $100. That is a huge profit margin. And on top of that, all of this can be done within an hour. So that's an hourly rate of $100 just for doing some very basic designs on our laser. Now, when you put that into perspective, that you can buy a diode laser setup for a couple of $100, we're talking about recovering the cost of your investment within hours. That is genuinely the truth. And even if you buy something more expensive, like a CO2 laser, we're talking days and weeks as opposed to months and years. So you're probably thinking, okay, that still sounds a bit too good to be true. How is you going to achieve it? Well, by making layered personalized tags just like this one here. These genuinely sell between $5 to $10 each, maybe more in affluent areas. And when you think about it, you can get 15, 20 of these out of your sheet of material, and that's where the profitability really starts to kick in. Not only that, but you can do everything from designing them and cutting them and finish them within an hour. That is how quick they are to turn around. Now obviously we make them look a bit rustic, we add some personalization, family names, pets names, and they become really desirable. You could literally stick a tag like this on a present wrapped in brown paper and it would make it look really nice. Now I'm going to show you how to design various ones of these in Lightburn very shortly, but if you don't want the hassle of doing it yourself, you can buy a file off my website that has a whole bunch of different designs that you can just customize to whatever it is you need. But for now, let's dive into Lightburn and I can show you how to make these very easily. So everything we're doing today is going to be fairly simple, but we'll begin with the square rectangle tool. I'm just going to draw this out quickly and I'm going to put in some dimensions. I want this to be a width of 70 millimeters with a height of 40 millimeters. Hit enter, make that permanent. Now technically, a rectangle like this could be considered a tag, but we want to make it just a little bit nicer. So we're going to come over to the regular polygon tool, and we're just going to draw one out. Now obviously this comes out as a hexagon. What we want to do is make this an octagon. So we're going to come over to the far right hand side where you should have a tab saying shape properties. Open that up and we're going to adjust the sides to 8 sides. Now we're going to come back to the drawing here and zoom in a little bit. We want to make this the same height as the tag. So we're going to come up to the height option, type in 40, hit enter. Then we're going to come back to the arrow tool, select both shapes together, and we're going to align these on the top. So we're just going to drop that down, click align top, and then we're going to pull this in, just basically try and make this slightly narrower and move it across a little bit. Now obviously you can do this by eye. If you hold down shift, you can just move it in certain axes like we can see on screen there, and I'll put it there. We're now going to select both shapes and we're simply going to weld them together, and that makes the outline of our tag. Obviously we're going to need a hole to put some string through, or a ribbon, something along those lines. So we're going to come use the circle tool, draw one out, hold down shift to keep it uniform, and I want to make this slightly bigger. I'm going to make this say 8 millimeters. Now we want to align these both in the center of each other. So again we'll select both, we'll come up to the alignment tool and we'll click align H center. Now what we can do at this stage to make our life a little bit easier is highlight both of them, right click and come down to group. Now that is essentially the outline of our tag. How simple is that? What we need to do though is replicate this a few times. So I'm going to zoom out a bit. We're going to drag this shape all the way down to the bottom left hand corner, and then we're going to come over to the array tool here towards the bottom of the toolbar. We're going to select that, and the joys of this tool is it does it live as you adjust it. So on the X column we're going to click up and add a few columns to it, maybe 4, and then on the Y we're going to add a few to that as well and give it a few additional rows. And obviously you can control the space in between each tag depending on if you want to get them closer together or further away, obviously depending on the curve of your cuts and how much space you want to save. But there is everything laid out, and we actually have 24 tags laid out at the moment. So we're going to click OK at this stage. Now obviously the next part is to create the names that go on the tag. Now we're going to come over to the type tool. I'm just going to zoom in, and we're going to begin to type. Now the font that I am using is Dulcinea, and I'm going to do this at a size of 18. Now there are obviously lots of fonts out there that you can do this with. You can get this one from dafont.com, and it is ultimately free for personal use, but obviously if you're using it for commercial use, like technically we are going to be doing, then you need to purchase the license for that. But let's move on and get this done. Now if we do a name like mine, for example, we're just going to go James. Now one of the good things about Lightburn is as soon as I click off this, all of these overlapping parts actually make it become one shape. So we'll come back to the arrow tool, and you'll see now that is outlined in one shape, and it is actually ready for us to cut. However, some of these parts like the E to the S, that might be a little bit too thin and ultimately could be quite fragile. So we want to beef this up a little bit. Now there is a bold option here, but all this actually does is space the letters out a little bit more, which is not really what we want. So what we're going to do is come up to the tools menu. We're going to come down to the offset shapes, and we're going to add an offset of 0.3 millimeters. We want this to go outwards, we want it to stay rounded, and we also want to delete the original object or the original text that we had in place. So I'll click OK. Now what that has just done is obviously beefed it up a little bit more and made those thinner sections a little thicker so it's less fragile. Now obviously you don't want to cut this on top of the tag, so the next thing you would naturally need to do here is put all of the names, as I say, to one side or a separate sheet. The one thing I should highlight is as soon as we applied that offset, none of this text becomes editable. So if you want to repeat it, then do the repetition early on, and I'll just show you that very quickly. So if I delete that out of the way, and we'll just come back and put it in as fresh text, I'll put James again, and then we can actually do the text array from this point. If we just move that over, and again we'll use the text array, and I can just show you that in practical application and apply it like this. So again, we can produce the same amount of names or similar amount as the tags we actually have. Obviously, different length names will vary. But one thing I do want to point out is some text may need additional work, ultimately to make your life a little bit easier. If I undo this and press Ctrl Z, take it all back down. Now, obviously, James works quite nice because the J, the A, the M, E and S all join up together, but this is not going to happen on every letter or every word. So we'll bring the text tool in again, and if I do something like Oliver, what we can actually see is obviously the O doesn't align, or the O doesn't join up with the L, and we also have the dot for the I. Now this is really easy to resolve. We're going to do the same thing we did earlier. Come up to Tools, use the offset shape, and again apply a 0.3 offset, delete the original. We're then going to zoom in, just going to ungroup these for a second, and all you simply need to do is highlight the parts you want to move, drag them across slightly using the shift key to hold it down, make sure they overlap a bit, and we'll do a similar thing with the dot on the eye. Just drag that down till it's touching the top of the eye, then select all of the shapes holding down the shift key, and use the weld tool over here on the left hand side of the toolbar, and that then makes it all one shape. So when you come to cut this out, obviously it will make your life much easier in sticking this down all as one. And if you already have a list of names ready to go, you can use the variable text feature in order to make your life even easier. I'm not going to go into this feature on this episode, but there are lots of videos out there that can show you how to use it. So once everything is cut out, you're going to have a bunch of tags and also a bunch of names or words. Now the joys at this stage is not only can you be creative, but actually the rustic look of having the overburn on the edges of the letters and things like that can actually help the effect. Now if you really want it to be quick, simple and easy, you could literally just take the tags as they come, take the names, stick them down like that, and your tag would technically be done. That is one way of doing it. Nice, cheap and easy, very quick to turn around. If you want to do something a bit more interesting, you can use things like dyes and colour stains. Now this is a medium oak, I believe, so I'm just going to take a little bit of this. You can apply it very quickly, obviously, to the tag. As I say, sort of that thing, it doesn't really need to be perfect. You can let that dry, and again you can stick a name down to that, and again it would actually look pretty good. You could go even darker. I've got a darker stain over here, and just start to build them up. Now you really do have such a variety in the way you finish these. If you wanted to as well, you could even do it with spray paint. Obviously I just like stains because it allows the woods to come through. And just to prove my point, if I move all of these out of the way, here are a few that I've already done. One, just leaving it with the plain colour for the wood, but actually colouring in the name as well, just to give that bit of contrast. This is a medium oak, leaving the name in the normal colour of the wood, again to allow the contrast. Also going with the darker stain, but doing actually the lettering in white, again just going with the contrast, but to make it pop a little bit more. And if you really want to go a step further, you can even bring colour into it and do something like this. Now what I've done with this one is I've actually done the tag in white, I've done the lettering obviously in red, and some of the bits that fell out of the holes for the lettering, I've obviously coloured those in as well, just to try and make a bit of extra decoration. Now when it comes to actually gluing all of these down, obviously anything like super glue will be fine. I've been using Starbond Thin. I find it quite useful to actually just apply a very thin layer of glue to the lettering, and it doesn't get over your fingers too much or doesn't leave too much thick residue around the letters. Now even if you kept this quite simple and did something like 3 for $10 and you got 18 out of a sheet, that is $60 from your £3 piece of material. So even at the low end, you are still making a great profit just from doing very simple tags. Now obviously these designs are quite basic, so let me take it one step further. I'm just going to open up a separate Lightburn file right here, just to show you some additional ones that I have done. Now all of these are available in the file you can download, plus many more, but I'm just going to quickly talk you through how you can make your tags a little bit more interesting. We'll start with the bone shape down here. You'll obviously see there's an additional blue line. Now the way this works is obviously the black line will be cut out, the blue line will just be an engraving. So it just adds another feature to your tag, and if I switch over to the preview, we can just see what it would actually look like there. Say the inner line sitting inside of the outer cut. Now if I scroll up slightly, we've got a similar thing going on here on the actual tag, but with a perforated line. This is this green line over here on the left hand side. Again, can just be another nice feature to make it work. And the way we do this, if I close this down, once you create that line, come into your layers palette and obviously make it a separate layer, double click into it, and you will have this perforation mode. And this is how you do a dotted line. You essentially state the length of the line you want it to burn on and the length of the gap in between it. Now if you're not seeing this perforation mode option, what you need to do is come up to your settings menu up here, the cogs icon, click onto that and untick the beginners mode. Beginners mode simplifies things down a bit, and ultimately if you want to see all of the features available, turn this off and then click OK, and you'll have that perforation mode available. Up here we've got this one for Ada's First Christmas, and this is just engraving First Christmas on the tag itself, with Ada's name being as a separate piece. And again, if we zoom in, we can see how that would actually cut out on the preview window. Click OK, get rid of that. And then down here we essentially have a layered tag where you would have an outer ring and the name on the inside. Now whilst these do look good, one thing to remember is that obviously the more pieces you cut per tag, the more space it is going to take up on your material. So arguably you should probably charge a little bit more for tags like this that are made up of multiple pieces, because you're using more material as a result of it. Now you may notice this cloud looking shape over here. If I drag the word mom over the top of this, you'll see how it is meant to look. Now this is actually really easy to achieve and can be a nice way of making them personal. And again, this is very easy to achieve. So we'll come over to the text tool, and I'll do this very quickly. I'll just clear some space and put it over here. And we're going to go mom. We're going to obviously change this font to the Dulcinea that we've used earlier on. Now the first thing that we are going to do is create the offset line for this to make it a bit thicker. So offset 0.3, perfect, that is how thick we want it. Now we want to create a really thick offset to this to give the outline for the tag itself. So again, offset shape, but we're going to make this much thicker this time. We're going to bulk this up maybe to something like 4. Now the other thing we need to do is turn off the delete original object. So we've unticked that, we click OK, and there you have the tag and obviously the word inside of it, so you kind of get this bubble word effect. And do remember, because of this type of wood, even things like felt tip pens and markers will also help colour it in. It will absorb it nice, you just go over, and it saves going out and buying things like wood dye. As I say, you can just do it by hand with felt tip pens. Felt tip pens can obviously work out cheaper, give you a wider variety of colours, and technically be safer if there's no chemicals in them. Ada's First Christmas using a silver pen on the name, the dog bone design from earlier with the additional outline, and the mom tag I made with the additional outline offset. Now before somebody mentions it, no, I haven't factored in consumables, and there is a reason for this, because everything you need to make these tags is fairly cheap. A tin of stain, less than $10, you will get hundreds of tags out of this. Similarly, a ball of string or rope, maybe $5, and again, it will go forever. So the actual cost of the consumables to make this is relatively low. And even if you factor them in to your very first batch, I can guarantee you'll still end up making profit off it, and obviously have the consumables to last you for many tags going forward. And that is why these can be extremely profitable. So an hour of your time, a little bit of creativity, and potentially a huge profit margin on something that is relatively simple. Now if you don't want to go through the hassle of designing them all, just a reminder, there is my project file you can purchase from my website that has a whole bunch of different layouts so that you can customize, making your life so much easier. Now if you are thinking of selling these at something like a craft fair, remember you can do different approaches. You can either take them all pre-made, making your life even easier, or you could potentially do the names and the tags separate and glue them up on the day when customers want to pair them up with different names to different things. So you do have a couple of choices. Now I do hope you found this video useful. Of course, if you did, please give it a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe if not done so already. Thank you all very much for watching, and final thanks as always goes to my patrons. If you want to get involved for one-to-one help, early access to content and giveaways, definitely check out my Patreon page. But that is it for now, and I will see you all on the next episode.